something inside the palace didn't just shift, it snapped, and the moment it did, Meghan Markle's last remaining path back into royal life didn't quietly fade. It was cut off with surgical precision, signed, sealed, and locked into protocols so rigid that even King Charles himself couldn't casually undo it. Because what Princess Anne did wasn't emotional. It wasn't impulsive. It was calculated, cold, permanent, and the most chilling part, it had already been activated before anyone outside that room even knew it existed. No shouting, no spectacle, just Princess Anne standing before senior officials, one hand pressed against that polished table, delivering a decision that didn't just change invitations, it rewrote access, erased possibility, and quietly closed a royal door that had been left slightly open for far too long. And suddenly, Meghan Markle wasn't just not attending. Meghan Markle was no longer eligible, not for state ceremonies, not for balcony appearances, not for palace receptions, not even for those carefully curated family moments that once blurred the line between personal and public. Gone before a guest list could even reach King Charles, Meghan Markle's name would already be removed, not debated, not reconsidered, blocked, and here's where it gets uncomfortable. Because this wasn't about one event. This was about building a system that would survive hesitation even from King Charles himself. Think about that. A protocol designed not just to exclude Meghan Markle, but to prevent King Charles from reversing it in a moment of emotion. That's not a temporary restriction. That's a structural decision. And Princess Anne knew exactly what that meant, because every door that closed on Meghan Markle would echo back to Prince Harry. Every rejection would feel personal. Every silence would feel like judgment. And when Meghan Markle received that message in California, something shifted. Not anger, not yet. Disbelief, she read it twice. Then again, because she expected resistance, she expected pushback, she expected politics. But permanence? That was different. She asked the question that revealed everything. Did this include memorials? Family occasions? The moments that are supposed to transcend politics? The answer came back cold. Yes, no softness, no loophole. And just like that, the last illusion collapsed. Because this wasn't something King Charles could fix with a private invitation. This required formal reversal, multiple signatures, senior authority, meaning even if King Charles wanted to change it, he couldn't do it quietly. And that detail, that's the real story, because it tells you this wasn't just about Meghan Markle. This was about control, about ensuring that no last-minute emotional decision could reopen the same conflict again. Inside the palace, something else was happening. Officials weren't debating, they were leaving, silently, because the decision had already been made. And Princess Anne, she stayed behind, staring at a letter. One letter, written by Prince Harry, unopened because she already knew what it represented. Not apology, not reconciliation, a warning. And suddenly, the conflict wasn't just about Meghan Markle's access, it was about loyalty, blood, choice. Because if Meghan Markle was permanently out, what would Prince Harry do? And that's where things get complicated. Because to Princess Anne, this wasn't revenge, it was protection. Protection of the crown, the system, the institution that cannot afford to bend every time personal conflict walks through the door. But to Prince Harry, would it feel like protection or betrayal? Because let's be honest, Meghan Markle never fully gave up on the possibility of returning to royal visibility. Maybe not as a working royal, but as someone who could still stand beside the family during major moments. She was triggering a chain reaction. Because if Prince Harry steps back, what happens next? What happens to the image of unity? What happens to the already fragile balance inside the royal family? And here's the twist no one saw coming. This entire protocol, this permanent exclusion, didn't start as a grand strategy. It started with one event, one request, the Commonwealth Remembrance Reception. And what happened during that moment, during that private call, changed everything. Because that's where Princess Anne realized something critical. Informal boundaries weren't working anymore. And when informal control fails, power becomes formal. And once power becomes formal, it doesn't bend easily. It doesn't negotiate. It doesn't forget. The moment that private call ended, something irreversible had already begun moving beneath the surface, and it wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was something far more dangerous. It was quiet certainty hardening into permanent power. Because what Princess Anne understood in that instant was brutally simple. This was no longer about one disagreement, one seating arrangement, or one public appearance. This was about control slipping. And once control slips inside an institution built on precision, it doesn't come back through conversation. It comes back through enforcement. The Commonwealth Remembrance Reception didn't collapse because of one request. It collapsed because every detail became a battleground security, positioning, arrival routes, recognition, optics, each one reopening the same unresolved tension again and again. And Princess Anne saw the pattern, a cycle that never ended, a negotiation that never settled. But from Meghan Markle's perspective, this wasn't instability. This was visibility. Because being placed among private relatives instead of senior royals didn't feel like compromise, it felt like deliberate diminishment. And that's where the fracture deepened. Because both sides believed they were protecting something essential. One protecting structure, the other protecting identity. That private telephone call between Meghan Markle and Princess Anne didn't explode, it froze. Meghan Markle argued that her marriage, her history, her connection to Prince Harry could not be quietly reduced to a lesser presence. Princess Anne answered with something colder than rejection: principle. Royal position follows service, not marriage alone. And in that moment, the conversation didn't just fail, it hardened. Because Meghan Markle heard erasure, and Princess Anne heard refusal to accept reality. Then came the line that sealed everything. Meghan Markle warned that the palace would be responsible for the consequences of shutting her out. Princess Anne didn't argue. Princess Anne ended the call. And hours later, when Meghan Markle's team returned with new demands, separate arrival, principal entrance, independent coverage, it didn't look like compromise anymore. It looked like escalation. And that's when Princess Anne made the decision that changed everything. Not another negotiation, not another temporary arrangement, a protocol, permanent, unbreakable, without collective authority. Because once something becomes protocol inside the palace, it stops being personal. It becomes law. When Meghan Markle confronted Princess Anne directly, the tension didn't rise, it sharpened. No advisors, no scripts, no filters, just two positions that could no longer meet in the middle. Meghan Markle demanded to know why every path back had been closed. Princess Anne gave the only answer left, because the system had already decided. And then came the question that neither could soften: if Prince Harry stood beside Meghan Markle at the entrance, would the palace still block her? A pause. One breath. And then that single word didn't just answer a question. It erased possibility. Because it confirmed something devastating, this wasn't about circumstance. It was about status. When King Charles signed the final approval, the moment wasn't triumphant. It was heavy. Because the signature didn't just enforce order, it acknowledged loss. Loss of flexibility. Loss of reconciliation. Loss of that fragile hope that maybe, somehow, things could be quietly repaired. But King Charles still signed. Because the alternative was worse. Endless instability. Endless conflict. Endless reopening of the same wound. Prince William didn't hesitate. Prince William saw the cost clearly: every uncertain invitation, every unresolved detail turning national events into personal controversy. And that was something the monarchy could no longer survive. So the safeguard was tightened. No exceptions, no private invitations, no last-minute reversals, not even if Prince Harry arrived with Meghan Markle at his side. And then came the first real test: the National Service of Unity. Not just another event, but a moment designed to show togetherness. And yet, behind the scenes, everything had already changed. Meghan Markle's name wasn't debated. It wasn't removed. It never made it onto the list. That's how protocol works. It doesn't react. It prevents. And when Meghan Markle saw that guest list, the silence said everything. Because silence, in this case, wasn't absence. It was confirmation. Final confirmation. Prince Harry's response became the last unpredictable element. Attend and accept the boundary. Refuse and deepen the divide. And when the private invitation arrived separate, deliberate, it revealed the final truth. The palace wasn't rejecting Prince Harry. The palace was separating Prince Harry from Meghan Markle, from conflict. But Prince Harry didn't answer immediately, because the real battle wasn't public anymore. It was internal: loyalty versus belonging. And when Prince Harry finally made the decision to decline the event without attacking the system, it didn't resolve the conflict. It transformed it. Because by choosing silence, Prince Harry removed the explosion everyone expected. And that silence became louder than any statement. By morning, the secret was gone. The protocol was public. And the reaction split everything wide open. Some saw strength, others saw cruelty. But the truth sat somewhere colder in the middle. This wasn't about winning. This was about ending something that had refused to end. Meghan Markle didn't respond immediately. Not because there was nothing to say, but because anything said now would only confirm what the palace had prepared for, that every appearance would become another battle. And this time, the system was ready. Princess Anne stood firm, not defending, not apologizing, just explaining that the monarchy could not survive if access became negotiation. And in that moment, the line was no longer blurred. Family remained, but the door to duty was closed. And here's the part that still lingers, unresolved, uncomfortable, impossible to ignore, because while the palace now has certainty, what it doesn't have is peace. Because when a door closes this completely, the question doesn't disappear. It waits quietly until the next moment someone tries to open it again.